On this episode, my guest is Andrew Culkin, author of Amanda, a Cautionary Tale. On today's episode of The Open Highway.
The Open Highway with Eric Erickson.
And hello, everybody, and welcome to The Open Highway. I am your host, Eric Erickson. Thank you, as always, for joining me. Today's show is, I hate to say it's a special show, but it is definitely an important show. My guest today is Andrew Culkin. He is the author of the upcoming book, Amanda, a Cautionary Tale. This is a book about his experiences with his late wife, who was an alcoholic. It eventually led to her death. It's a very heart-wrenching tale, but it is a story that he tells and he shares with us that hopefully will help some people. We get very candid and we get very, very open about his story. So I really thank him for that. And it's an important interview. It's an important conversation. So I hate to say I'm excited to bring it to you. I just think it's important. For those of you who know me, I've talked about it on the show. My father was an alcoholic. It didn't lead to his death, but it definitely caused problems in my family. There was abuse, physical, mental, emotional abuse stemming from that. He did eventually die. Some people might say that the alcohol led to it, but it definitely played a factor in my upbringing. And it's something that I deal with. And part of the reason I wanted to talk to Andrew, I wanted to hear his story. And it's tough. I mean, 95,000 people die in the United States every year due to alcohol-related causes. I mean, that's 261 people a day due to alcohol. And in our society, Andrew and I talk about it. We treat it with humor. We treat it, Otis the town drunk, or, that's my drunk uncle. He just, he's up to no good. But especially after COVID, I mean, you probably all remember how everybody was making jokes and memes about just a good chance to drink for 2 years, and all the delivery services were jumping on it, all the commercials that came out about having alcohol delivered to your house. And well, now we're starting to see the aftermath of that. We actually are seeing mental health problems that are coming from it. We're seeing alcohol numbers that have gone up. We're seeing substance abuse numbers that are going up. I don't know if we want to call it a second pandemic. Some people call the mental health issue that's come out of the pandemic as a second pandemic. I definitely think it's something that we need to address. I know I'm bringing guests on the show to talk about it. And, well, Andrew and we really get into it. And again, I'm really happy that he's so honest and vulnerable about his story and his book that's coming out about what he went through and how it can help people. So after this, my guest, Andrew Culkin. If you are a coffee drinker like me, you know there's good coffee and great coffee. And then there's amazing coffee. And at the top is Kona coffee. But did you know the Kona blends you see in stores can actually contain as little as 10% Kona coffee? So go right to the source. Plantation coffee has been named the best coffee in the world by Forbes magazine, and you can get it now by visiting koacoffee.com. Don't stand for anything other than the best. Koa Plantation Coffee. Save more when you get their triple pack. koacoffee.com. The link is in the show notes. I'm trying to figure out how to start, because it's like, I want to talk about the book, but I think there's so many other things that you do, and I know how it relates to everything. So might be a little scattered here to start with,
That's
but
all right.
that's the fun of conversations, right?
Right.
It's like you're talking to somebody, you walk in, you're like, hey, how's the weather? Oh, by the
Right.
way, I wrote a book about my wife.
It's like what's going on. It's like what's going on right now. Right?
Yeah. Well, that's
Right.
part of it, right? To be in the moment, but at the same time, like, fix things. So
Absolutely.
let's hit the book. So the book's called Amanda, a Cautionary Tale. So really quickly, can you explain kind of what the book's about and how you got to the point, and we'll take it from there.
We only have an hour now.
Yeah, we only have an hour.
Actually, the full title of the book is because it was actually work in progress when I think last time I talked to you, but it's called Amanda, A Cautionary Tale of Alcoholism.
Hmm.
And it's the unforgettable journey of family resiliency and loss. So it's not just about Amanda, it's about helping families identify a loved one who has, any kind of issue, uh, any kind of addiction issue. Could be an eating disorder, could be gambling, could be sex, could be drugs, could be any kind of disorder, and to understand it as a mental health issue and
Hmm.
understand that alcoholism specifically is a disease, and that we have to operate and understand it as a disease, and we have to help these people as a disease.
Yeah.
And just like cancer, the earlier that you catch it, the earlier that you can help someone, and the better chances that they have of survival, and actually getting back into the world and having a life again. Because when you're chronic, when you've been drinking for 10 or 20 years, you have about a zero chance of survival. You're going to live a short, unhappy life once
Yeah.
you become a chronic alcoholic.
And we have a lot of times as a society, because remember we used to have it's like Otis, the town drunk.
Right.
We used to. There was a time when it was just like, oh well, that's our silly uncle, and he drinks too much, but I don't think we look at it that way anymore. I
No.
think we're starting to change, and like you're saying,
Yeah, the alcoholic isn't just the disheveled homeless guy on the corner. They walk amongst us. They're our teacher. They could be your doctor. They could be, hopefully they're not your airplane pilot.
yeah. I'm hoping they're not my doctor either. Quite
But
honestly,
sometimes they can be. They can be. So a lot of doctors are addicted to drugs,
yeah.
to their own prescriptions. Um, but
But
doctors,
we've added that term. We've added the term functioning. So now we
right?
have that term. Oh, he's a functioning alcoholic. Oh, they're a functioning drug addict. Oh, but that's,
There's no such thing,
we
really.
liked it. We like to pretend.
There's no such thing as either you're an alcoholic or you're not. And
Yeah.
some people, and the biggest thing of the only way you can help somebody, and there's 5 things that an alcoholic has to say to themselves. Number one thing they have to say is that I'm an alcoholic and that
Hmm.
I have an issue. They have to have the self-actualization that they have an issue and it's affecting their life and the lives of everybody around them.
Mm.
And you can't even start until that takes place. There's no point in even starting. Otherwise, you're going to get resistance. You're going to say you're drinking. No, I'm not. You're an alcoholic. No, I'm not. Yes, I am. No, and you're
Yeah.
not. You're not going to even go to step one.
And that's part of it. Isn't the other thing too is like they say, you have to get sober for yourself. You have to quit smoking for yourself. You have to, if even if somebody says, oh well, I got sober for my kids. Okay,
Right.
well, are you addressing the problem, or are you just, as soon as the kids move out of the house, or as soon as they're raised, you're just going to fall back in the same habits?
Right.
Because it's just putting a bandage on it
It
in
is.
some ways.
It's all a band-aid. It's all. It's a conversation in your head, and you're
Mm,
lying to yourself. That's the biggest thing. Alcoholics are liars. People who are addictive, have addictive problems, are liars. They're lying to themselves and they're lying to everyone around themselves until you're actually able to come to terms with it. Because everything happens in your head. If you don't have it right in your head, you're not going to have it right in your life.
yeah. When when it came to your wife, was there a time when you kind of the light bulb went off for you? Like, did you avoid it as well for a
Well, I
while?
didn't, I think I was woefully ignorant. To give you some background, I mean, she always drank when I first met her, and I thought it was she was Canadian and a little French Canadian in the background. And wine was something she drank every day. I'd
Hmm.
never been exposed to wine. I grew up in upstate New York. My dad had a beer once in a while. We
Right.
didn't drink wine, but it was Chardonnay specifically was just all part of her life. And a bottle of Chardonnay every day, like maybe a 0.75 turned into 1.75,
Oh.
which is I mean, it's a a couple liters of wine a day, 7 days a week. But she was able to maintain, and I just thought it was part of her personality and part of culturally her family. Um, looking
Did
back,
it change your personality? Did you notice a change?
well,
Or was she just like, because some people are like, oh, well, they're a happy drunk. They just get cheerful and
yeah, I think it made her, whatever her core problem was that made her drink,
hmm
I think it was her way to escape. It was definitely her way to relax.
Okay.
You know, some people do yoga or they meditate. Hers was to drink a bottle of wine. You know, and it was usually at the end of the day. See,
Right.
we were insurance brokers. We had our own insurance brokerage, so there was a lot of stress. I mean, everybody has stress, but I
Yeah.
mean, it was a way for her to deal with stress for at the end of her day.
That was her coping mechanism,
That was her
was
coping
drinking.
mechanism.
Okay.
But I think there was a core reason why she drank before that. I think she had some, you know, childhood issues. Everybody has childhood issues of some sort. I think uh, that was her core problem. There's some
Yeah.
issues that I can't really talk about that happened in her childhood
No,
that I
that's
think
fair. That's absolutely.
is the reason why it even existed at all.
So was there a day where you just were like a tipping point for you where you finally kind of
Well,
wait a second.
yeah, when she drove through the front of our house, yeah,
Oh, well, that would do it.
that
I
was kind
could
of a
see.
red light. Way in the book, there's an incident. Really, the first red light was when she started getting DUIs, and she ended up getting 4 DUIs in her during her career. But the first one, she was actually my car was in the shop, and she was supposed to pick me up. And 8 hours later, I was still waiting for her, and she hadn't answered her phone, and she had been picked up by the police, and I didn't even know where she was for 3 days. That's when it was started getting very real.
Mhm.
uh, you know, when things like she was starting to go missing, when she started getting incarcerated, when she started running through the front of our house, things like that were pretty well established red flags.
Okay, so when she runs through the front of the house, like how do you like we've all had like I've been married, you're like we all had that day where it's like, honey, I accidentally broke the washing machine. Honey, I accidentally like she's standing there and been just kind of like, sorry, you know.
Yeah. No, it's not. It wasn't that simple. The reason being, well, she was actually incarcerated. She had at this point she had had 3 DUIs, and she went to jail for 90 days.
Hmm.
So she was really pissed off that I didn't visit her enough when she was in jail. Well, I mean, it was our open enrollment season and I didn't have any time. But when she came out of it, she disappeared for a couple of days and just went off on a drinking binge because she hadn't had anything to drink in a few days. She took the car. I didn't even know where she was. Uh, and I had a feeling that she was going to be coming home at a certain time. She had texted me, and I went in the garage. You know, I have 3 car garage, and there's windows across the top.
Hmm.
So I looked out the window, and I could hear something. You know, I could hear she had a BMW X5. I could hear it coming down the road. It just had a distinctive sound.
Hmm.
I saw it coming up the driveway, uh, and it wasn't. There was no brakes. There's no brakes, and I could see the grill of the BMW coming up the driveway. And going, I don't think she's going to stop, and I had to jump out of the way of the garage door. I had like a couch and a little man cave area and in the one section. So I jumped over the top of the couch. And as soon as I did that, the car came right through the garage door. And she almost killed me. And the only thing that stopped the car from going through the living room and into the house itself was that the garage door, the frame of it wrapped around the front of the truck and actually stopped. The wheels were actually spinning inside the garage after it had gone through the garage. I got up, ran around the front of the car, opened the door, and she was actually passed out in the driver's seat. I had to physically take her foot off the gas pedal. You know, I laugh now, but then it was just like, it's just
It's
really
like
happening.
it's like something out of a movie. It's like
It
I can
was
see it, like
right,
literally the scene.
and
And then so
it's
when she comes to, like, did you call
oh
the paramedics or did like
I turned the car off, got the car keys, and I just let her sit there. And she was in the car, passed out for a couple hours. I mean, she was completely incapacitated. I don't know how she even made it home.
yeah.
Now she probably passed. She was probably half passed out, just coming in the neighborhood, and just managed to just through inertia made it, to our house.
There's that old drunk joke is like when we used to joke about it when we were college because everybody, you drink in college, nobody like it's a sport, it's not a problem. But we
Right,
used to play pool a lot and you would get
right,
drunker and you'd always say like there's more than one ball. And you're like,
right,
well, hit the ball in the middle. And you're like,
right.
yeah, but it's an
Exactly.
even number of balls. Well, I need to have another beer so there's an odd number of balls so I can hit the one in the middle. So maybe she was just like just concentrate on the middle line of the road.
She did. It was actually the middle of the garage. Actually, that's where she parked. That's where she parked the truck. Anyways, was in the middle. But as the garage door came down, I mean, the garage door came down, smashed the top of my Mercedes, screwed that one all
Oh my
up.
God.
So she took out basically both our cars in one whack.
Imagine that insurance claim.
Oh, and the thing is, on that subject, I actually had to claim that I did it because she, at this point, was completely uninsurable.
Yeah.
She had no driver's license. She was uninsurable. She had warrants, and I didn't even register the car because I didn't want her to drive it, and the car was unregistered.
Yeah.
I mean, she was a walking time bomb.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
what was the next conversation after that, after she eventually came to? Or
Well,
you
after that, it was, it's time to go to rehab again. It's either going to rehab or we need to separate because I can't do this anymore.
and what did she
This is
say?
this was well into it. This is only about 4 years before she actually passed away, and she did. She went to a rehab.
Okay, and what happened?
Well, she actually went to 7 rehabs.
Well, it's 3 more and she gets 1 free, right? Isn't it like
Yeah,
the punch card?
exactly. She ended up going to 7. I can't remember what number this was,
Yeah.
but this was an incident where that she realized that she had screwed up so badly that she needed help. So
Yeah. I
essentially,
I I
she.
do wanna say I'm gonna start with I don't mean to make light of it, but I
Oh,
think for me, I know personally humor is a deflective, and it seems like you kind of use it as well.
oh,
So I just
absolutely.
wanna make sure, and to those who are listening, I'm not making fun of it, but at the
Right,
same time, I come from a family that has
right.
alcoholism, and
I
we
remember you
use
mentioned that.
humor, you
Right.
know. We're very dark humor people.
Yeah, me too.
Um, so I wanted to sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I just wanted to get that out there so people don't think I'm an asshole. I mean, I am, but, you know.
Well, aren't we all? It's a funny thing getting back to, we talk about college
Yeah.
and pool and stuff. See, one of the reasons why the whole motivation behind this is to help kids because the average alcoholic starts their career between the ages of 13 and 20.
Mhm.
And most kids start their alcoholic career in college because it's a way to, they may be introverts or it's a way to come out of themselves. They're having experiences for the first time in their life, and it's the first, and it's you have nothing but peer pressure
Yeah.
to drink. I
It's
mean, it's the
socially
most.
encouraged.
And if you're not drinking, what's wrong with you? You
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
And a lot of kids they start drinking on a Friday night and they're hung over on Saturday. They drink on Friday and they have to drink on Monday just to get over the weekend. And before you
Mhm.
know it, it's Thursday and they're trying to get over the last weekend. And they've created a habit and a problem.
Yeah. And there's a
And
pride to it.
there is.
There was a kid where I went to college, a very famous, student, at least famous to us, who he had used his family credit card to buy at the alcohol place, but he told his parents that it was, the bookstore. And they actually posted his credit they blocked out the number, but they posted his credit card statement in the window because it was so
Right.
amazing what he pulled off. And where I went, and they don't do this anymore, but I went to USC, we had a bar on campus
Yeah.
called Traditions,
Right.
and you were actually allowed to use your meal points to buy alcohol. And eventually they got rid of it.
Yeah.
But it was this bizarre, like they figured out that this isn't a good thing.
All right.
But yeah, it's socially acceptable. It's socially
Yeah.
encouraged.
No liability there for
No,
USC.
not at all. Not at all. USC never does anything illegal.
No, I don't know.
Um, none of those buildings that were named after or sports teams or anything.
All right.
So let's talk about I'd like to get to you said it was 4 years before death. I'd like to address that because I think it's going to really affect the entire conversation. So what happened? What eventually happened to your wife?
Well, eventually you have to realize, like I said, there were 7 rehabs. In fact, a lot of times I would put her in a rehab facility so that I could go and visit my family. I'm from back east. I live in Southern California. So I mean, I would put her in a rehab for a month so my son and I could actually go visit my family because my parents were getting older,
Mhm.
and I couldn't take her. Um, Another particular story which goes along with this, what happened to her is that when my mother died in 2015, it was a very long death, but I actually took my wife with me. And while we were in the hospital, my mother, she had a lot of chronic issues, but while we were in the hospital with my father and my family, my wife stayed back at my dad's house. And I came home. I couldn't figure out why she seemed like she was drunk all the time, but we didn't have any alcohol in the house, I thought. And about a week into it, I realized that she had cleaned out my dad's entire liquor cabinet. And he had a liquor cabinet that, he didn't drink that much, but he had, maybe 10 bottles of stuff that it was probably covered in dust up somewhere up in the kitchen. And she had discovered this.
Yeah.
And I came home one day and she's passed out in the living room in a pile of her own urine. This is after my mother's dying and I had to deal with all this. And for that was the beginning of the end for me, is that if she could be so callous to do something like that, and she was so gripped with this disease to be able to do something like that. It really changed our relationship when we came home. I at that point, my mentality was, I'm just going to get through this until my son goes to college. And at the time, he was 15. So I
Yeah.
had 3 more years I was going to put up with this nonsense. What happened was it never really stopped. The last 4 or 5 years of her life, she basically went from incarceration to the hospital to rehab facility, back to jail. She did outpatient facilities, and it just was it just went down and down. There's nothing that could help her. She'd come out of a rehab facility after 60 days and be drunk on the floor 2 weeks later.
Mhm.
One of the reasons why I talk about this is because the follow up in rehab facilities themselves, they're inherently good. They're all inherently good while you're there, but there is no follow up other than go to an AA meeting and get an accountability partner, and that's pretty much all you have to work with. Which is, to me, it equates to telling an open heart patient, someone who needs open heart surgery, why don't you go do the surgery by yourself? It
Yeah.
makes about as much sense.
Yeah.
And these are things that have to change.
Yeah.
We have to have better checks and balances when someone comes out of a rehab facility.
Yeah. And we make fun of it too. I
Oh,
mean, we make fun of everything, but like there's the old joke like rehab is for quitters,
right.
or there's a
Yeah.
famous scene on the Simpsons. I'm a big fan of the Simpsons where Barney gets out of rehab and he
Right.
gets his chip and he goes into the bar and he's like gives it to Moe and Moe's like, "Yeah, that's good for a beer." And he
Right.
like, it's and that's the way that we approach it.
We approach alcoholism with humor. And
Yeah.
the reality is it tears people apart.
Yeah.
And I mean, 150,000 people or more die a year in the United States, just alcohol alone.
Yeah.
And it doesn't even include all the other health issues, liver issues, cancer, that are directly related to alcoholism.
Yeah.
The worst part is it destroys families and generationally upsets, uh, and culturally it can upset
Mhm.
a lot of families.
Yeah.
I understand all the humor. I come from an Irish family, so
Oh.
yeah, I've never heard an Irish Irish drinking joke in my life.
Oh,
I
never.
wouldn't
Yeah.
understand what that was.
I have a friend who he passed away not from alcoholism, but he was an Irish Catholic and he got
Right.
busted for drinking at Notre Dame,
Right.
and he actually got arrested for it, and he had to serve community service, and his community service was serving beer at a Catholic harvest festival. So and
Right.
it became a joke because it's like one for you, one for me, one for
Right.
and
Exactly.
that's it's just kind of the way it is.
Well,
I'd like to get back to so what happened? What what eventually happened to Amanda?
the last couple of years of her life, she had a series of operations. She had her knees replaced because she had gained so much weight because of the alcoholism. She had fatty liver. She had a number of different issues, and physically she was going down. She suffered from depression, which would be a natural occurrence when all this is happening, when you're going to
Mhm.
jail, and your whole life is really going down. It's affecting myself. It's affecting our son, um, and it just got worse and worse and worse. There was nothing I could see that was helping her. She also got addicted to prescription medications as a result of her knee surgeries and her hip surgeries. She had two surgeries on her ankle. Uh, she had a lot of physical problems, and it became an excuse to drink and to take prescription drugs. About 6 months before she actually died, she tried to commit suicide by overdosing on drugs. She had to go to the hospital where they had to pump her stomach, and she was underneath suicide watch for about 10 days. From there, she went to a rehab facility, which was her last rehab. Oh, no, actually, second from last rehab facility. And then she went into outpatient facility for about 6 months.
Mhm.
Um, and she came out and she was immediately drinking again. So the last time would have been Christmas of 2019, and then January of 2020. I put her in a rehab facility near UCLA, and she fell down a flight of stairs at the facility after being there for one day. And I guess she broke some bones, and they put her in UCLA. She was there for about a month, and eventually she had about 12 different operations, and her blood pressure went so low, and she had so many physical ailments that they said, there's just no point in continuing with this. I actually wanted to cut it off long before they did, but they had to do their due diligence, I suppose.
Yeah.
And she was on dialysis, and they actually left her stomach open. They actually opened her up, and she was open for about 2 weeks because they had to go in and clean out all the all the whatever the problems were that were inside of her. They had to clean out all the what's the word I'm searching for? If she had a lot of just a lot of tissue in there that had to be cleaned out.
Okay.
I mean,
Yeah.
I don't need to get into it too much. But
I know I have a pretty solid image of her lying there. So,
all right.
So I have a question that I want to ask, but I'd like to ask a different question first. How's
Sure.
that for journalism? Like, okay, I'm
Okay.
going to ask you a question, but I'm going to ask you something else.
Right.
The first question I want to ask you leads up to that one. So you were married, you were together for
27 years.
27 years.
We were married for 25.
Okay, so 27 years, you fell in love with her. Who was the
Right.
woman that you fell in love with? Because obviously it wasn't the same woman later.
Okay.
It changed her.
Yeah.
But tell me about the woman you fell in love with.
Yeah, she was a shell of what she was. The woman I fell in love with, she was very vivacious. She was intelligent. She was probably one of the best salespeople I ever met. She'd walk into a room and light the whole place up. She was very attractive. She had blonde hair. She had these piercing blue eyes. She was nothing but positive energy and joy. She brought joy into the room. She had 2 dogs and 4 cats, and she would walk around the house, and the dogs and the cats would follow her as she walked around. Just the energy that she had.
Mm-hmm.
She just attracted everybody that was around her. She'd walk into a room, and everybody would turn in her direction. It was very. She was somebody I was very proud to be with.
Hmm.
And we had a wonderful.
How'd you propose to her?
I think I just did it at our house on the couch.
But you knew, like, you're like, I want to spend.
It was like, look at this ring that I bought. Check it out.
Slick. Look at
Yeah.
you. But you knew, like, you looked at her and you're like, this is the woman that I want to be with. I want to be part of that energy, that joy.
We were very good friends. We were very close. We had a very good relationship. I think people were actually jealous of our relationship. People had said that to me, because they were like, God, I wish I had a relationship like that.
Yeah. So the reason I asked you that is because now I want to move forward to after she passed.
Right.
And you said you have a son, so what, 16, 17 at this point?
Well, he's 20. When she passed, he was 19.
And he's 19. So
at the time, he's 22 now.
I think it's probably pretty obvious that you were affected. I mean, it's very obvious you were affected by her passing and everything that happened.
Right.
How were you initially affected, and how was your son initially affected by all of this, and then her passing, and passing under these circumstances?
Yeah, honestly, for the both of my son and I,
Mm-hmm.
it was relief. We were absolutely relieved that this was over, that this circus, this nightmare was over, and it was absolute nightmare for the both of us. It was over a year before I actually cried and actually was able to contemplate about, well, I lost my wife.
Did you feel like the woman that you loved had already died? Kind of.
She for me, she died about the time my mother did.
Oh.
She died in 2015 because she was no longer there. When her actions were so callous and so premeditated and so self-centered, there was no longer a relationship there to work with.
Yeah.
How it affected my son when she died, and I guess I hadn't paid enough attention to it, but he weighed he was 19. He weighed about 298 pounds, and he had developed an eating disorder, and I
Mm.
hadn't realized it. A year later, he understood that, and within a year, he had lost 120 pounds. So he went down to about 182 pounds within 12 months of my wife's passing.
In a
So
healthy
he was
way, though?
in a healthy way. Oh yeah,
Okay, yeah,
oh yeah.
yeah.
He ate. He did it by dieting
He
and
gained control of his life back.
exercise,
Yeah.
and he got a girlfriend, which was the biggest motivator.
Amazing,
Yeah,
huh?
yeah. You can't be the dumpy 19-year-old kid and expect to get the hot girl. But I mean,
Yeah.
he really worked on himself, and he did it by himself because he realized that he needed to mature and grow up and not have this experience with his mother affect his own life
Mhm.
negatively. And I'm very proud of him, the fact that he's very anti drugs and alcohol. For his 21st birthday, his friends gave him a bottle of Jack Daniels. And a couple weeks later, he gave it to me. He goes, "Dad, I don't want this. If you want it, please take it away from me. I want nothing to do with it."
Yeah. This is a company I am not just happy but proud to bring you. Black Helmet Apparel creates high quality clothing, accessories, and equipment for firefighters, police officers, military personnel, and those who support them. Founded by a third generation firefighter, all the designs are hand drawn and unique. No clip art, no cheesy sayings, just images that relay the fearless but frightening side of a firefighter's job. Apparel, gear bags, bunker gear, and a full line of accessories, plus unique and amazing challenge coins. And check out their pink line collection that raises money for breast cancer awareness. BlackHelmetApparel.com. Join their mailing list for 10% off your first order. The link is in the show notes. BlackHelmetApparel.com, where frightening meets fearless. Did either of you, and his life is private, so I understand
Right.
if there's anything that you don't want to talk about, but did you go get help? Did you go get therapy? Did you go get support
I
at
think
any time?
we never did Al-Anon. He didn't want to. He didn't really
Yeah.
want to. I think he wanted to work on himself in his own way.
Yeah.
For me, I did this thing called I wrote a 600-page book about
I was just gonna say, I have a feeling that was your therapy.
it. Part of it, I generally don't want other people to go through the nightmare that I went through
Mm.
because it's a lot worse than some of the conversations that you and I are having right now. I'm only
Yeah.
touching on some of the real colorful things that happen. There's a lot worse things that happen.
Yeah, I can only
That,
imagine.
you know,
So was there a moment where you went, I need to write this down? How
yeah.
did that come about? Was it after
Well,
she died, or were you
after
already
she
thinking
died,
about it? Okay.
after I was thinking about it, because I wanted people to, because I think the biggest motivator initially, I was angry. I think my
Mhm.
first emotions were relief and anger. I was angry that, she chose this path and she left myself and our son, and it bothers me. Someday my son's going to get married and she's not going to be there. Someday I'm going to have grandkids and she's not going to be there. And I was angry about that.
Yeah.
She's taken that away from the next generation. It's a very selfish thing. It took me in fact, I started writing the book about 4 months after she passed away, and I wrote about 120 pages, and I realized there was a lot of anger in there. And at that same time, I met my current girlfriend, and I took about 10 months off. And I realized I needed to separate myself from where the book was going, and it
Mhm.
really, really helped me a lot.
Mhm.
You know, I was able to make that separation and make a more objective viewpoint and make it into a third person, objective, um, creative story. Very interesting, but very educational, helpful, and um, very entertaining at the same time.
Yeah. How have people responded to it? Like you go and speak now, and you make appearances and you give presentations.
Right.
What do you hear?
A
What do
lot of
people
it,
bring to you?
well, a lot of what I do, and I have a Facebook group. The book, actually, I haven't even released it yet. I'm doing a TED Talk next spring.
Okay.
I'm going to release it around that same time. So
Okay.
I'm going to get a lot of exposure at the same time. And all these podcasts, I'm going to build it up for about 6 months to a year
Happy to
before
help.
before I put out. So I'm
Yeah.
I'm actually creating quite a crowd, and I'm going to have a coaching program that's going to be all part of it, to help families to
Mhm.
understand what's going on. Um, what was the line of questioning?
Well, how are, because you are doing presentations, like what do people say? Like,
Well,
I'm sure
I
they
have
come to you with their own stories or their own your similarities or different things. Like, what has the interaction been like?
I'm actually amazed at how many people uh, come forward to me and asking me for advice. Um, and they're identifying with what happened to me.
Yeah.
A lot of people in my own life, friends, family, people I grew up with, I didn't realize that they were either had alcoholic problems themselves or someone in their family was an alcoholic. Like some of my best friends, your parents had a problem. I had no idea, I'm drawing a lot of that out.
Yeah.
I have a Facebook group, and while I was writing the book, I put excerpts in the group, and everybody was able to talk about. Um, I might put like maybe 2 or 3 pages and try to make like a short story segment,
Hmm.
and everybody was very positive, whether they knew me or not. It was always, wow, that's amazing that happened, and we appreciate you sharing that.
Did you made me think of something? So we've all dated somebody in our lives,
Yeah,
and after we broke up with them, our friends were like, "Yeah, I never liked them,"
right.
or and it's like, "Why didn't you say anything?" Like when you were with her, did after she passed, did any of your friends or family kind of come back to you and be like, "Yeah, we always wanted to say something, or we didn't feel like it was our place," or and if they did, what was your reaction to that?
What, not with Amanda. Everybody actually loved Amanda. They really did, and that's part of the big tragedy. If she was like an angry drunk or a bitch and just a pain in the ass,
Hmm.
I would have got that. But she was never that. Even when she was in the grips of the worst alcoholism, she was still, I'm sorry, I'm putting you through this. She was apologetic. You had to tell her you loved her every day. It was a big part
Yeah.
of her existence. I love you. Um, but my family definitely interjected. They knew, especially when my mother died, because they saw it firsthand. No one ever said. It was very obvious that she had a problem,
Hmm.
and that's part of the problem is that you become isolated. A lot of her very good friends just disappeared. They just went away, and the
Yeah.
only friends that she really had at the end were ones that were people that hadn't seen her in years, maybe high school friends or college friends that might not have seen her in 10 or 15 or 20 years, that she only either texted or talked to them over the phone. People that were in her daily life were gone because, uh, I mean, you just can't be around somebody like they'd come over to her house and say, see that she was in such a horrible state. Even her best friends, they just didn't want to be around it anymore.
Did you lose friends because of that? Did you lose
I
your
lost
structure?
I lost some of the friends that were both our friends, uh, that I was able to reacquaint after she passed away.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
But
some of them I haven't, but some of them I
yeah, I
have.
was gonna say, so did you kind of learn who your real friends were, who your real support structure was, and who were
Yeah,
acquaintances? And
yeah. Well, some of them really wanted to talk about it, in depth,
did
afterwards.
you?
Yeah,
You want, like, were you craving somebody to go to and be like, "Look, I need to get this off my chest"?
I think a lot of people wanted to talk about. They wanted to talk about how they felt, and they were almost apologetic and just saying that they could no longer involve themselves in Amanda's life because it was too painful, or it's not something they wanted to expose themselves to anymore.
But it
And
was
a
how
lot of it,
they felt, though. It
it's how
wasn't
they
how
felt.
you felt. They weren't,
No,
were they weren't concerned about how you were doing. They weren't concerned about how, or were they?
they were.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
some of our good friends, they were concerned and they felt bad, but they were explaining themselves, you know. Um, I'd say three of our very good friends.
Hmm.
I actually talked to them. They weren't friends with Amanda. They really became more friends with me
Yeah, that makes,
afterwards as a result.
yeah.
And
Do you, do you think, so she, when she went to rehab 7 times,
all right.
do you think that she wanted help? Did she believe that it was really going to work? Or were there times when she was just doing it because she had no other choice, or to placate you or the judicial system, or do you think she really wanted to change?
I think it was a combination of all of the above, but there's one thing that she never ever was able to say, and that was, "I will never drink again in my life." She never had the
Mm,
ability to say that. And unless an alcoholic is going to have the mentality that they will never drink again in their life, no matter what, it's not going to work. It's not
yeah.
going to work
Did you ever do an
because,
intervention with her?
well, my intervention was with, it was just me and her. You're
Yeah,
going
you never
through.
had, like, your friends sit her down and
I
be
didn't need to. I was just like, Amanda, you're going to, what do you want to do?
yeah.
Do you want me to drop you off at your parents' house, or do you want to go to rehab?
Oh,
'Cause I'm done.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's no gray area. The interventions were between myself and I, or sometimes my son, although I didn't want my son to really have to deal with it that much.
Yeah.
But no, I never had to bring her family in because her family was part of the emotional problem to begin with.
Oh my god.
You know,
Do you how would you so how let's talk about other people then. So how would if somebody else was in a similar situation? I mean, this is what you talked to them about. This is what the
right?
book's about. How do they approach it? I mean, if they're not jumping over the couch in the garage so they don't get hit by the car, if it's maybe something a little more subtle,
Yeah. Well,
how do, how do they
everyone has their own breaking point. Everyone has their own limitation. Everyone has their own boundaries.
yeah.
Even though I probably waited way too long. I mean, I could have said enough 10 years before I did, probably.
Mhm.
But we had such a good relationship. I wanted to reestablish that. But I mean, in other words, but to help other people, that's it depends on that person's boundaries.
Mhm.
But if you notice that someone's an alcoholic, I think you should do an intervention immediately. The sooner, the better.
Mhm.
And you need to identify that that person has a problem. And if you're getting a lot of back, and the person won't go to a rehab, well, just like they do on television, there's repercussions. You don't want to be codependent. You don't want to keep giving that person a place to live, money, food to eat. You don't want to make that person's life easy,
Right.
because, and I always say this in my speeches, is that you have to let your children fail. You have to let that person fail. You have to let that person reach rock bottom, because that's the only way they're ever going to grow, and that's the only way they're ever going to admit to the problems that they have.
It's that
Is
tough
that
love.
is That's it. And they may the thing is, they might die. They might die in a park somewhere. But if you don't make this step, they're going to die anyways.
Yeah.
You know,
I found that what you said about boundaries interesting. You just mentioned
boundaries.
boundaries. I mean, so I would think that people need to be very clear about that. They need to not only hold those boundaries, but figure out what they are and be very honest with themselves and say, this, I will not allow this. This is the line. You are crossing a line. And I think
Yeah,
too often we move that line back and forth, or we're very kind of wishy-washy about
it
it.
gets it gets gray, and
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
people around the alcoholic have to have the integrity of holding to that boundary. That boundary has to be the Great Wall of China. It has to be immovable, really,
Yeah.
for it to work. And it's not just for the people surrounded the alcoholic. It's for the alcoholic itself too. They realize that there's a barrier there. They're not going to cross it,
Yeah.
and they're going to be forced to change. If nothing changes, nothing changes. You
So
know,
how can people do you have any advice or any suggestions on how people can hold that line? Because they love the person. You loved your wife. And like you said, there was a point where it was like, my words, not yours, she was dead to you, basically.
it
Or
was.
you had started
Yeah.
emotionally retracting from it. I mean, but how does somebody draw that boundary, hold that boundary for somebody that they care about without being like, okay, well, I'd rather have them with me in this condition versus not having with me because I'm playing too much tough love.
Yeah. I mean, you have to realize that you have to look at them, and this person is a disease has a disease.
Mm,
Um, and it's not, and I know people think it's not because they're making the decision to put alcohol into their body,
yeah.
you know, but it's a disease, and you have to have that mentality that it's a disease. But For everybody, it's different as far as the boundary goes. It's different, and you have to make that decision. How much can you put up with? How far are you willing to go for that person?
Yeah.
And it's different in every situation, and the relationship is different. If it's a child, it's even harder. How, are you going to let that child become homeless? You might have to make that decision. You know,
That's a tough. I mean, I'm not a parent, but I know many
that's a,
people who are, and they're like, I
that's
would
a tough one.
crawl over glass for my child.
Yeah, but if you're giving them money and they're spending that money on heroin,
Yeah.
you know, what do you do?
Yeah.
Or do you want them to? It's a tough thing. I always say, at least let them know that the options are running out, and that they have to make a decision. Otherwise, they're no longer going to have. They're not going to be in your life in the same way.
Yeah.
You'll always love them, but they're not going to be a participant in your life the same way that they are now,
Yeah.
at the
Have you
least.
have you ever dealt with like guilt issues or looked at it and it's like, I wish I had done this, I wish I had done that? I mean, or
No,
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 you're
I don't have any. I think she got more help than the average person will ever hope to get. Most people go into a rehab once or twice
mhm.
and they figure it out. You know,
I think you're lucky in that way because I think a lot of people would have I don't know. I think some people maybe it's a self-hatred or a self-esteem issue. Like, oh, I could have it's there's a horrible analogy, but it's that Schindler thing. It's like, oh,
right,
I could have just won more, or just,
right.
if I just gone this much further, or.
I think she was given every opportunity that a human being could possibly be given in life,
Yeah.
and she rejected every possibility. Even when she was dying in the UCLA, and I asked to actually had this conversation with the doctor. I'm going, and my brother flew in from Vermont because I didn't even want to go to the hospital. I mean, I was like so freaking done with this. But my
Yeah.
brother flew out because he knew I didn't want to go to the hospital. I didn't even want to see her. If she's going to die, she can go die by herself. That's kind of where I was at. And he kind of made me go. So we drove into UCLA, and she was just a mess. I mean, I couldn't even. Oh, I
Mm,
don't even want to see that picture anymore. But I actually told the doctors, I go, why are we trying to save her? What is the point? And my brother was like, why would you say that? I'm going, well, so we save her today, and we're going to be right back here 3 months from now.
yeah.
I mean, you guys don't understand. She's past the point of no return. She's not going to get better.
Yeah.
I knew that because I had lived it, but other people weren't there yet. They weren't there
That's
yet.
that's got to be tough. I mean,
Yeah,
that's an understatement. That's
yeah.
I don't mean to belittle it at
Yeah, it
all when I
was.
say that. So you're dating someone now, and
Oh yeah,
and stop smiling.
yeah,
So it when you started dating again,
yeah.
how did your past experience affect you?
I wanted to just start a completely clean slate.
Yeah.
I went out with similar people that were like Amanda, and I realized I was doing that, and I found somebody who was probably 360 degrees in the opposite direction.
How
Completely
so?
different person. She's Asian. She's 5'3", weighs 120 pounds. She's about half the size of Amanda and about half the size of me. She grew up in China, totally different culture. You know,
Doesn't
very
like wine.
doesn't like wine. Doesn't even know what alcohol. Really doesn't even know what alcohol is. Never had a drug in her life. Didn't
Okay.
grow up in America. Totally different culture.
Okay.
And it's been nothing but a wonderful learning experience that I've embraced. You know,
Yeah.
and we have just the greatest relationship. And her English isn't even that good. I remember the first time I met her, we sat on a park bench for 3 hours. Uh, and somehow we had a conversation. Later, she said she only understood about 50% of what I was saying. But
Oh.
emotionally, and the energy it's really wonderful.
Do you have um I don't want to say baggage, but I've there's no other term. Like, do you have PTSD? Do you have baggage? Do you have things that you still find yourself dealing with from that relationship, from your experiences with her, or have you kind of reached a point of peace and you know,
I think I've reached a point of peace.
okay.
Yeah, I think it took me a year, because
Yeah.
we have to realize we don't really get into it too much. My wife died, you see, February 21st of 2020.
Mm-hmm.
My father died 30 days after that. And he was perfectly healthy, and he had a stroke 30 days after that.
Oh, wow. Right as
Amanda,
COVID, too.
and then yeah, just as COVID was hitting, and then Amanda's father died 2 months after that, and then Amanda's mother died a month after that.
Oh,
I
my
literally
God.
lost my entire family in the space of 5 months, every one of them, and I had to
It's like a
reel with it.
reboot.
It was like people were like going, "I can't even believe this is happening." It was like,
Yeah.
who's dying? So my son lost his mother and all his grandparents within 5 months,
Oh, wow.
and we were dealing with that too.
Yeah.
We were dealing with
Good
that.
grief, man.
Yeah.
So,
But but I'm just saying and so those deaths, I was able to focus on those deaths,
mhm,
which got me past Amanda.
yeah.
I mean, that's the reason why I'm mentioning it. Not really. It just got me
Right.
past it, and
Yeah. And at the time, you're in the middle of it.
you're in the middle of
You're
it.
just
Right.
muddling through, definitely in the trenches, for lack of a better term.
Yeah. 2020 was a tough year.
Yeah, it's
It was a tough year.
I can imagine. Wow. So let's spend the last few minutes that we have here. So the book is coming next year.
Yes. Next
Okay. And you got a
next
TED Talk?
next spring. I was approved for a tech talk last Friday, so it's we don't have a specific date, but it'll probably be late spring. The season is next spring.
Congratulations on
Yeah,
that. That's
which
wonderful.
is yeah, I'm very excited about that.
Okay. So
It's really
where you have a Facebook group
right.
right now, is where can we send people who would like to get involved with or hear more about what you do?
Yeah,
And
you can read like excerpts and just read about what I'm doing. I put a lot of my podcasts in there, and a lot of some of the television I've done. But just Amanda, a cautionary tale.
okay.
You can find it, the group Amanda, a cautionary tale. Pre-orders, I have a website. It's amandacautionarytale.com.
Okay. Links
Uh,
are in the show notes. Everybody can
yeah,
go to the show notes and I'll have the links in there so you can click
just do
through.
the links, right?
Yeah.
Those are the two best places to go right now.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So if somebody's listening to this and they're dealing with their own situation, and I want to stress, and I think you would agree, we kind of touch on this. Everybody's situation is different,
It is.
and everyone has their unique situation, their unique hurdles that they're trying to deal with. While they're all connected, they're all definitely there are threads that run through it. I do always recognize that even with my experiences, with your experiences, nobody can ever understand exactly what somebody else is going through
Right.
because everybody is unique. But that being said, what would you say to somebody who's listening right now who's going through something like what you went through with your wife?
Well, again, you have to identify how it's affecting you,
Mm,
yourself, and you have to realize, can you go on or can't you? And you have to draw a line in the sand. If you can't go on, then you need to do a rehab. There's only two choices. Either that person needs to get help, or you need to separate yourself from the relationship.
mm,
If it's a husband and wife, girlfriend relationship, it's much easier. If it's a child that you're dealing with, or even a child dealing with a parent, it's the same. I mean, those are really the four different kind of relationships that you're going to be dealing with. If it's a child that you have to separate from, uh, you have to make that decision. I think you
mm,
have to make that decision. That's the hardest one. That's the one I talk about the most, because usually a lot of kids have heroin addiction. And a lot of these kids are coming from wealthy families, and the families are the ones that are enabling the addiction. They're
mhm,
part of the cause. So maybe you need to separate and let your child hit rock bottom, or your loved one to hit rock bottom, so that they understand and can have the experience of and the opportunity
mhm.
to grow on their own. Now they can get all the help you give them all the help they need, but they need the opportunity to hit rock bottom.
Yeah.
You have to give them that gift, that opportunity. They don't think it's a gift, but you need to give it to them so that they can grow on their own. Because you can't force somebody to grow. You can't force a butterfly. You can't force a worm to become a butterfly. It has to work its way out of its own cocoon on its own. You can't force that.
Yeah. Hey everybody, hope you enjoyed the show. Help us spread the word by subscribing and leaving a review. If you want to support us even more, you can find a link to our Patreon account in the show notes. And if you're one of our diehard fans, head on over to thevikingdogstore.com where you can find official Open Highway merchandise to show your support to the entire world. But most of all, thanks for listening.
For the highways of America, which for so many years were an assortment of as many designs and pavements as there were states, are now becoming one big road that can take you anywhere faster, safer, and more directly than ever before. What is this big road? Where is it going? How much has been built? How much is yet to come? These are questions we ask. Certainly traveling the entire system would be a memorable experience, but few of us have the time for such a trip.
The Open Highway is a production of Viking Dog LLC, all rights reserved, 2022. The Open Highway and Viking Dog may receive compensation from promoted products and affiliate links or promo codes featured on the show, in the show notes, or related platform materials. Neither guests or Viking Dog are ever compensated for any appearance on the program.